Welcome to Don't Chuck It Up, the podcast where we help students and families navigate the wild journey of the college search and applying to colleges without breaking a sweat. I'm your host, Chuck, and today we're talking about 8th grade and 9th grade. So a lot of people don't seem to pay attention to college until junior year of high school, but I think that people should be starting a little bit earlier. So I brought a guest with me today. Christina Dooley is an independent educational consultant, certified education planner, founder and president of Estrella Consulting, and her most important role for today's episode, she is the mother of triplets who are currently in 9th grade. Christina, welcome to the Don't Chuck It Up show.
Thank you, Chuck. I'm so excited to be here with you.
You are one of my favorite people in this entire profession. You have done so much between starting your own company, being former president of the Independent Educational Consultants Association, and of course, for today's role, the most important role, mother of triplets. So we need to talk about what's it like going through this whole process. But first, why don't you take a moment to introduce yourself in your own words for our listeners?
Sure. So, like Chuck said, I am an independent educational consultant. I've been working in this capacity for about 18 years. And prior to that, I worked in both college admission at my alma mater and also worked as a school-based college counselor. I've lived internationally. I started my business abroad and now I work with a combination of domestic students and international students and have an incredible team of IECs that work with me at Estrella. So that's a little bit about me. And I'm based in Ohio. I didn't say that, but I'm based in Ohio.
And we won't hold that against you because I'm based in Wisconsin and when there's a rivalry between our two states, but that's another story for another day. So what's it been like for you to be an independent educational consultant helping students and families navigate this college search and application process, and now having triplets that are in the mix of this whole thing? What has this experience been like for you?
Well, it's so funny because I remember very clearly what feels like yesterday, people saying, oh, just wait until it's your turn to go through this process. And lo and behold, here we are. It's been very eye-opening already. Like you said, my kids are in 9th grade and I'm already learning quite a bit. And I've just told somebody that the best analogy I can use right now is I have a pair of glasses on and one lens has a professional lens and then one has a parent lens. And gosh, when you put those two together, it's very, very blurry. So I'm learning a ton, and I'm also acquiring a lot of empathy for parents right now. And even though I've been working in higher education for over 25 years, I think we can all continue to learn that skill, and so I'm learning it a lot right now.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, that's what I think both you and I love about this profession is that we continue to learn. I just feel like you're getting the fire hose version of it right now, having triplets going through the process, and your 3 kids are very different personalities and styles. So you're kind of doing 3 individual processes simultaneously, which I've worked with a lot of twins, but I've never worked with triplets, so I can't even imagine what the ×3 version feels like. So do you think that you're really already kind of helping them plan for college? I mean, they're only in 9th grade, so what has been your reflections with helping them already start thinking about planning for college?
Yeah, it's funny because when my kids were in elementary school, their teachers used to reach out and say, "Where did you and your husband go to school? Because your children literally have different college t-shirts on every day." And that is the nature of, people who work in college consulting or college counseling is we visit so many schools. So that was what I would do is bring back their college t-shirts. But I think in terms of their exposure to this process, it did start a long time ago because they would, walk around wearing a Dickinson college t-shirt or an Oberlin college t-shirt or a USC shirt, or something. So it was like talking about what all those different things mean. And it's, for me, one of the things that's been but what's been happening recently is looking at their high school course scheduling was probably the beginning. When we were in 8th grade, when they were in 8th grade last year, and we were having parent meetings and things like that with the counselors, talking about, okay, the choices they make for ninth grade really do kind of predict the trajectory that they're going to be on for the rest of high school. And that's a scary thing, which
Yeah.
I don't think a lot, when you talk about, getting started earlier than what people typically anticipate you need to start, I think that's one of the main reasons why you should actually. I mean, that was really important last year. And I had a lot of the parents of their friends asking, what should we do about math? What should they take the honors class? Should they have an extra study? What are all those things and how does that impact 10th, 11th, and 12th grade? So
Right.
definitely something I was learning as I was going through it, even though I've done that before with families. It's very different once you're in the throes of it yourself.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that you're really living right now is that when students and families come to work with us, we are typically seeing them at the end of sophomore year, beginning of junior year, and for many of my students, senior year. And I'm
Mhm.
oftentimes playing problem fixer because they're applying to a college or a major that really needs calculus and they are not on track to
Mhm.
take calculus. So we have to quickly figure out how to do that with summer courses or doubling up on math. Or they're applying to a college that requires more foreign or world language and they're behind on
Mhm.
that. Or the one that we have an issue with here in the Midwest is that the University of Minnesota system requires a year long of fine and performing arts is one of the things that they want to
Mhm.
see. Well, here in the state of Wisconsin, most high schools do not require fine and performing arts. So students are like, what do you mean I need an art class to apply to certain colleges? I'm like, well, it could be art, theater, music, I don't care. But all of a sudden we're scrambling and I have a lot of seniors that are taking sculpture for senior year or senior photography because it's like, hey, I need an art class in order to apply to some of these schools. So yeah, a lot of this would be better off if we talked about it way back in 8th grade. And that's why I wanted to have you on to really give parents some tips and ideas as to, okay, how do you plan for this as they head into spring schedule planning when we start the next semester?
Yeah, and I would say one of the things that I also learned was that sometimes the I've done the same as you, Chuck, having to look at transcripts as, a junior year transcript and say, well, gosh, why was that decision made in freshman year, or sophomore year? Why did they scale back? Why did they decrease their rigor when they were doing fine academically and, moved from a higher level class to a traditional college prep class? And what I actually discovered in talking with some parents going into ninth grade was some of the parents actually were going against the recommendations of school counselors, which I think sometimes, and I'll say this, I've worked on the school side and I have a lot of respect for my school side counseling friends. And I think that's a hard thing when parents are really saying, no, I want my child to do this against the recommendation of the school. I think there's a time to push back and there's a time not to. I don't know, I'm not in all those family situations, but I
Right.
did see that a little bit where families would say, but we don't really want them to, we don't want them to get the B. We want them to get the A. So we're not going to push them to take the more challenging class, even though that's what's being recommended. Or vice versa. I will say, like with my own children, going into a higher level course that was recommended to them, and it was a decision we had to make as parents. And I think the school is an integral partner. I think that's one of
Yeah.
the things is it's really important, but also for parents to speak up. I have to say this: we went to ninth grade conferences for my children, and my husband said after the second meeting, he said, "I think we made the teachers nervous by scheduling these conferences because my kids are doing well academically, and the
Mm.
conferences are optional." But I wanted to go in and meet the teachers. I wanted to go in and talk with them about how they were doing and ask those questions about trajectory. Very few other parents went because their kids were doing just fine. So they didn't feel a need to go to conferences. I would encourage parents go to the conferences because that is actually a place where you can learn about what is next. I learned so much, even though I'm in this space. And I should say, after that second conference session, the next teacher we met with, I started with, we're not here to complain. I hope you don't think that we're here for that reason. Because my husband had me panicked. I was like, oh gosh, what did we do? But the teacher meetings are there for a reason. They're setting that time aside. Take advantage of it, even if your child's doing great in the classroom.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. As someone who is married to a teacher, The teachers are obligated by their contract to be there during the parent-teacher conference hours, and oftentimes teachers are just sitting there because parents don't sign up. And either it's for other reasons, like maybe parents are working or scheduling conflicts
Sure.
happen. But I agree with you that a lot of parents go, I don't need to go. My students are doing fine. Why do I need to go take up that teacher's time? Well, it would be
Hmm.
helpful for parents to understand, are there big projects coming up in the class? Are there
Hmm.
things that are expectations that need to happen, or how to prepare for finals? Or, are there online resources that the parents need to be aware of so that
Hmm.
when the student freaks out at 9 o'clock at night on a Sunday, the parent can go, oh, did you check this, website?
Hmm.
Because now you're aware of it. And I also think that helping them understand what is the next class they should be taking after, and teachers are a great resource to help them kind of think about, oh, your student is doing well in this class. This is what we would recommend. This is what I would
Right.
recommend as a teacher, what you should take next.
And I'm sure that I'm sure your spouse appreciates conversations with parents who have kids that are doing well, not just, not just
Yes.
challenging conversation, but yeah, I think that's, yeah, very
Yeah.
good point.
And I remember when my mother went in for parent-teacher conferences, I was a solid student, but she wanted to go in and thank them for, being a great teachers.
Hmm.
Teachers have a hard rap in this country, and so, just go in and say thank you. My mother may have dropped off a few candy bars in the process of meeting with teachers. Partially that was because my father went to the same high school, and my father was a horrible troublemaker student, and we had the same name. And my mother wanted to make sure that the teachers didn't go, oh, another Chuck Erickson who's going to cause hell in my class. And my mom wanted to be like, no, no, he's not going to do that. So anyway,
Yep.
so thinking about course planning, and we touched on it a little bit, but how do we help parents and students think about course planning as it ties to career exploration and majors? Because obviously that's one of the reasons why you need to think about what courses you're taking, so that you're preparing for not only the high school graduation requirements, but the college entrance requirements. And those lists are two very different things.
Yeah, and I think one of the challenges, and what we just mentioned earlier about the timing of when kids start to actually explore what's required for colleges, is typically pretty late in the game. And so knowing going into high school that there are certain academic areas, certain majors that do require certain basically thresholds of math and science preparation for the most part. Those are the two that come up the most. Things like engineering and nursing,
Yeah.
there's going to be an expectation that kids have taken higher level math or higher level STEM classes. And so if they're not starting off in ninth grade doing that, they're really going to be pushed at the end of high school to try to. I've seen kids double up on classes, double up on science classes because they need to get them in, or taking summer math classes so they can get up to calc, so knowing going in, if your child's even remotely interested in something like that, understanding what that is. I'll give assignments sometimes to our early high school families and say, think of, 4 or 5 colleges that you think your child could potentially consider. Maybe it's our state flagships, maybe it's a private college, whatever that is, and look at what the requirements are for those programs. Look right now, because that'll give you a sense of what should they be doing. The other thing is, if they start to take those classes early on, and I hate to say it, but not every kid is successful in those classes.
Right.
So that could be an indication that maybe that pathway is not the right pathway for them.
Right.
And it doesn't mean it's the end of the road. It means let's pivot and try something different. And so it's better for them to do that at that point, ninth grade,
Yes.
10th grade, than to be doing that 11th and 12th grade. And, I think colleges are going to be looking at that trajectory on the transcript. And that's just the reality of it. The other thing that they can start exploring when it comes to academic areas of interest outside of schoolwork is, we will sometimes encourage kids and parents. This is actually a great way for parents to help. Is if a student expresses an interest in something. For example, one of my children just mentioned something about hospitality management. Well, I happen to have a friend who works in Chicago in the hotel industry. So I said to her, let's get you on the phone with her. So we can, let's get on a Zoom, and because they don't talk on the phone, they talk on Zoom or FaceTime.
Right.
Let's get you on and have a little conversation. It can be 20 minutes. So she can tell you about what are all the different kinds of jobs in hospitality management,
Yes.
because I don't think she has any sense of what that is, but this is a great way to do that. So if your child's indicating that they might have an interest in something, use your network, and try to find someone that they can talk to. I'm not a big proponent of eighth and ninth graders trying to find internships. That I
No,
don't know how
no.
many offices or employers want to have an eighth or ninth grader wandering around. I think it's totally okay though for conversations to happen
Yeah.
or for a student to go in and get eyes on what a workplace looks like. That's okay, but it's not going to be a whole summer internship. But I think that also helps kids understand just how many roles go into certain operations. I'm a mentor for college for an organization here in Cleveland called True to You, and it's a college and career kind of organization that helps eighth graders start thinking about that trajectory. And one of the activities we do is we talk about, and I hate to even reference this, we talk about the Cleveland Browns and we talk about a
Yeah.
Browns game and what does it take to put on one NFL game here in
Yes.
Cleveland. And we talk about, and of course they start off and they say, well, you need players. Okay. You need coaches. Okay. You need whatever. We get down, there are hundreds of jobs that we come up with to put on one NFL game. So if their job goal is to work in major sports in some way, thinking about all the jobs that exist, it doesn't have to be the player. It doesn't have to be the coach. You could do so many different things. So I love that kind of activity with kids in eighth and ninth grade because it does get them thinking about just that we think of silos when we think of careers, lawyer, doctor, teacher, et cetera, engineer, but there's so many different branches of that. And that eighth and ninth grade time frame is a really good time to start thinking about those branches. And parents can help with that.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you said. Lots of great advice. I know you talked about math. I'm going to go way back to the start of your point
Yeah.
of math and science, specifically for engineering and nursing. The other category, then it's the most popular major, is business. And for many of these
Yes.
business programs, they now want to see students who are preparing to either be in calculus as a senior or
Yep.
plan to take calculus their first year of college. And while that impacts your trajectory. And that's another example of getting them, doing career exploration in eighth grade and ninth grade. It is the most popular major that kids talk about.
Yep.
And I work mostly with teenage boys, and that is the number one thing they come up with is business. And I'm like, well, business isn't really a major, it's a category. So what do you mean when you say business? And I use the football example as well. Of course, I live 30 minutes from Lambeau Field. So a lot of my students can use that reference. And I tell my students, if you watch any sports game, I don't care if it's football, hockey, baseball, the next time you watch a game, pay attention to all the people who are either on the playing surface or near the playing surface who are not a player or a coach. And there's a lot of people. And now you're thinking about, things like ESPN and news broadcasting and all the commentators and, the commercials and the advertising and the ticket sales. And like, they're huge machines, and you don't have to be a professional athlete to be involved in major sports. Like, come on. But yeah, I think it's great. One thing that my father used to do is as he would go around and visit with his buddies that he would hang out with, he would take me with and have me see their jobs. So he would go, when my dad had to go to the bank and meet with the banker, I went with, and I got to see what the bank was like. And, when he went to meet with the salesperson, I went with, and I got to see that sales area, and it got me exposed to a wide variety of careers, none of which I ever was interested in. My father tried. He wanted me to get into some of these industries, and I'm like, no, I'm a people person. Sorry.
Yeah, but that exposure helped you see that though,
Right.
see what would be happening or not.
Yeah. The other area is academic planning is obviously a huge piece of high school, but what about the involvement piece? That is, I think, another big factor in helping kids get ready for college. So what's the discussion going on in your household having 3 ninth graders and involvement?
Well, I will tell you the very beginning of the school year, as I think is common at a lot of high schools, they had an activities fair. And my kids came home with a folder of all the different flyers from all the activities. And now the way they sign up is there's a QR code on all these flyers, so they're signing up for all these things. And they quickly realized how many, you can only attend so many 7:30 a.m. before school club meetings, right?
Yep.
Because if you're involved in or lunch meetings or after school, there's limited amount of time. And so we talked a lot at that point about testing the water, see what they actually really wanted to be involved in, and choosing a handful or a couple that they felt more drawn to. And they did go, for example, to maybe some of the first intro meetings to see if it was right. And
Yeah.
I told them, if it doesn't feel right, don't go back. You don't have to. Just remove yourself from the roster. You don't and don't feel bad about it. And I don't, you may have had this too, Chuck, but I know I've had students that get to junior year, for example, and they've played a sport their entire life. They get to junior year and boy, they're burned out, or they've come to this, like, have an epiphany that they're not, this isn't going to be something they continue on in college, maybe. And they're not that happy with it. They're something that's not bringing them the joy it used to. But they feel stuck. They feel like if they stop doing that activity, it is a reflection on them that they're a quitter. And I tell them that what you need to do is you need to find the things that make you happy. Someone reviewing a college application doesn't look at that, okay, they stopped after 10th grade playing soccer. What a quitter. That is not actually what happens. But what they'll see is instead, maybe that student stopped doing that and they pivoted to something else. Maybe there's some other thing that they're doing. Maybe it's a job. Maybe they're working. Maybe they're doing another, or a club or activity, volunteerism. Maybe they try a new sport. As long as the students are filling their time, and I don't mean filling every minute, because they need time. Their mental health it's crazy, the impact on mental health that kids are experiencing, adults are experiencing it as well. But I think it's okay for kids to find things that really do make them happy. And I think the biggest myth that exists is that there is some kind of list that exists that is the right activities. Am I doing the right activities for whatever school it is? And I will say, one thing that I will say that is I have found to be true is that if a student is interested in something, for example, if a student's interested in the medical field, it would behoove them to try to do some activities that point to their interest in that area, to demonstrate that yes, okay, they actually have enough of an interest in it that they're joining the, Future Doctors of America at their high school club or something like that. That is, I think, important. But if they feel that that's forced, I think that should be a little bit of a message to them. If they are feeling like that I'm being forced to do this, then I think that's important. So with going back to your question about like activities, my kids are all athletes. They do sports year round. But I also want them to be involved in things like fun things, stuff, not that sports isn't fun, but I also want them to understand that they need to be able to balance time. And I think time management is probably the hardest thing for kids going into high school, especially if eighth grade, seventh grade has been kind of easier for them. Academics have come naturally. Get to high school, it's a whole other ball game. I mean, just the amount of work, the time they need to devote to studying, it is a very, very big jump. And I've noticed that with my own kids. So talking about making sure we're prioritizing, school stuff comes first. And that may mean you have to skip out on something on the weekend that you really wanted to do. But it might also teach you that, hey, maybe I could use my study hall periods during the week to get stuff done so I don't have to skip out on that on the weekend. So I think that's a good way for parents also to start helping kids get going on that without doing it for them. It's just that I think I'm just saying what you already know, but one of the hardest things for us as college counselors or college consultants is getting parents to let their kids take the lead on things and take responsibility for things and to fail gracefully, and I think that letting them do that early in high school is the time to do it. Let them realize, if they get a bad grade on something, talk about why that was. What was it that, and don't place blame, but say, this is the learning opportunity. Again, if you didn't focus on this, studying for this test, what could you do differently for the next time? Don't wait till junior, senior year. And also don't make excuses for them. I don't make excuses for my kids. When something goes wrong with school things, we talk about it. I don't blame them, but I tell them this is an opportunity for you to learn. And that might mean if you feel like you need to reach out to the teacher, you reach out to the teacher. I'm not doing it. You need to do that on your own. Send them an email, ask them if you can come in and get extra help during your study hall. And that is the time to do it, not 11th and 12th grade, and certainly not in college. That's way too late.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with all of this advice. It was incredible advice. Get them involved. I think There's a worry of like they need to do breadth of activities, and we need to be okay. They have to be in a sport, they have to be in a music group, they have to be volunteering, they have to like all the no. Colleges don't, as
Right.
you said, there isn't a magic list of activities that colleges need to see in order to get into a quote unquote top tier college. I'm on Reddit on the applying to colleges subreddit, and that is probably the most common question as what activities do I need to be doing so that I'm a great applicant for whatever. And I love your point about find your passion, do the stuff that you love and brings you joy. That could be, even hobbies can be something that you can talk about in a college application. It doesn't have to be a super structured, I got an honors and award and I'm president of the club or organization to put it on a college application. If it's something that brings you joy, I had a kid that loved fly fishing and he talked about his passion for fly fishing. There wasn't a club or organization, but he was able to talk about how he learned how to do it, how he taught other people, it had nothing to do with any club or organization, but he could write a very passionate essay and talk about what all he had done as a fly fisherman over the course of his 4 years of high school. So it doesn't, it drives me nuts when parents ask me, what are the clubs or organizations my kids have to be in? Do they have to be in National Honor Society? Point, no, you don't. I was not in National Honor Society and I did fine. Like it's nothing against National Honor Society, but that is not a requirement to go off to college to be there. So yeah, I love all of the stuff that you gave them, and they can stop. Mental health is important, and if the sport is burning you out and you don't love it, or you're involved in theater or music and it's burning you out and you don't love it anymore, stop. Like it's fine. Sure, your coach might get frustrated, or your ensemble director might get frustrated, but they will deal. You're not letting them down. You're not like ruining their lives. You're taking care of your own life, and that's really the most important part in that whole thing. So you've given some great advice already for parents, but what are some things that you would like parents to really hone in on what they should be doing or should not be doing for their kids getting ready to think about college?
So going back to the activities piece, I think one of the things that parents could do that could be helpful is when students get into the application process senior year, one of the things that's often hard is for them to recall what they've done, or for example, if they've gotten some kind of a recognition as a freshman, or maybe ninth or 10th grade, they volunteered for an organization and did something, but it's like a one-off kind of thing for that year. What I tell parents is it would be a good idea for you and your child together, do it under your child's Gmail account, create a spreadsheet of some sort with their activities so that you can keep track of all that stuff. And that's kind of something I'm doing with my kids myself, is they created spreadsheets that every once in a while, we'll go in, like after the season, for example, we'll go in after the fall semester and we'll end up looking at it to see, okay, what did you do? And maybe even jot down a couple notes about that experience, because it's really hard as a senior to recall why something was important to you as a freshman. And so I think that that's something parents can do. The other thing is, I mentioned, in terms of career exploration, really thinking like, what are ways I could help my teen explore the things that they're interested in terms of careers. With the one thing, and we might talk about this later, but the part that is truly a parent piece, and I hate to even bring it up if we're talking about any of the ninth graders, but it's a reality, is the financial implications of college. And I think that this is a good time for parents to start helping their child understand that college is an investment, and for parents themselves to start thinking about the cost of college and the reality of are you telling your child they should be looking at these super selective schools? But in the reality, those are schools that don't offer any kind of merit award. You might be a family that's not getting any kind of need-based aid. Is that school actually going to be in your budget? If it's not, stop pressuring your child to think about that school. And so, but that can happen early on, is kind of the exploration of the true costs of college. And families may know this, but when you apply for financial aid, it's based on the prior year from when your child graduates. So like my children graduating in 2029, it'll be based on 2027. So it is it is something that parents could start thinking about. What do our finances look like? What is in our budget? They could certainly do price calculators, SEI calculators to see what that looks like. But the other piece, and I think this is a tangible activity you can do with your kids as a ninth grader, is there are a couple of websites that you can create accounts on. One of them is Raise Me, which Raise Me is basically a micro scholarship site, a micro grant site that awards money to students based on activities, grades, involvement, all those kinds of things. But students can create an account early on in high school, so ninth grade, create an account, and they go in and they put in their grades for the year in there. They put in their clubs and everything. And I mentioned to Chuck before we started the podcast that I actually have a student who gets $8,000 a year out of Raise Me. And so it's you may end up with nothing because maybe your child ends up getting a big merit scholarship and it ends up not mattering because the Raise Me money the merit replaces it. But it's something to do. You can start doing that with your kid, and also it's a way to keep track of things. And then also with our students, we have all of our students create Going Merry accounts, which is essentially a scholarship search site that's free. And students create a profile, and then it will let students know if there's scholarships available for them. But again, it's just more of an activity base. So spreadsheet for activities, Raise Me, Going Merry account, all these things you can do with family fun, right? But the other thing too is set aside time. We say this to even our junior, senior families is don't make every conversation about college stuff. Think about setting aside time when it's appropriate to talk about it. Maybe it's, you tell them, hey, every Sunday, or one Sunday a month, if you're a ninth grader, one Sunday a month, let's just check in, and just see like what's happening. The other thing is most families get in the car and drive places, right? At some point in time, you're probably passing a college campus every once in a while. So my advice for parents is stop at that college campus. Let your kid get out of the car and look around so they can get a sense of what does a big state school look like? What does a small private school look like? What does a urban school look like? Rural, in-state, out-of-state, whatever that is, wherever your travels take you. My children have been on I don't know how many campuses just by nature of us driving from Ohio to Florida. So, and do they remember it from when they're little? Maybe, maybe not. But I will tell you, 8th and 9th graders probably will remember parts of that. They will, they will say, oh gosh, this felt comfortable, or oh, that felt very overwhelming, depending on the place. Or they might even say, I thought, when I think about college, I always pictured myself in a city. And I'll tell you, one of my daughters, we went to New York City, and she used to always say, oh, I'm going to go to college in New York City. We went to New York City. She took one step into Times Square and said, no way, we're not going to New York City. And don't get me wrong, I love New York City. But for her, she realized that it wasn't what she was picturing. So I think those are ways that parents can support their kids. The other that is a very easy thing to do, that's a tangible tip that I'll give to all families early on, is to create a Gmail account or an email account of some sort to use for the college stuff, because I will tell you, it will, when it starts coming, it comes fast and furious. And I say an email account for I should have made it clear, it's for your student. My kiddos just took the PACT, and all of a sudden they were like, why am I getting emails from all of these schools? And I also, the other piece of advice I gave them was, if they are schools that we know they're not going to apply to, I'm having them unsubscribe immediately, because you'll end up with thousands of emails. But trying to keep that separate from their school stuff, because it'll just be too overwhelming for them if they've got it all in one place. It'll be too much for them. So it was a lot of tips.
That's a lot. No, and I'm going to take a moment to share some websites with people, especially for those watching on YouTube, so you can see these. A lot of the websites that Christina referenced are also going to be in the show notes for those who are listening on the podcast. But yeah, let's first start with that whole email thing. Yes, have a professional sounding email as well, so it's not baby boy whatever, birth year at gmail.com. Like, come up with something that is much more appropriate. And the unsubscribe is real. I think a lot of kids and parents have FOMO, and they're worried about, like, oh, if we get off of that college's mailing list, they're going to hate us and we're never going to have a shot at that college. It's like, no, we're trying to keep you from getting hundreds, if not thousands, of emails from colleges, because once you take the pre-ACT or the PSAT or the ACT or the SAT, the colleges will start getting your information and they will start inundating you. So I have a whole podcast episode on how to control your email, and
Good.
really encouraging students to, like, you have to open the email, you have to scroll to the bottom, you have to hit unsubscribe and like legit unsubscribe. A lot of my students think just deleting the email stops it. I'm like, no, deleting
Right.
it gets it out of your inbox. It does not stop the water from flowing and the emails from
Mm-hmm.
coming. So
Yeah.
let me walk some families through some of these websites. You gave a lot of resources, so I want to go back and highlight them for a moment here. So the first one, we've talked a lot about careers and figuring out what jobs are out there. I always recommend careeronestop.org. Believe it or not, this is actually created by the federal government, and it actually is a really darn good resource. There are assessments on here. There's also a lot of career videos and understanding what goes into careers. So this is a great resource if you're wondering. As you mentioned earlier, a lot of students think about just the 5 core subjects as jobs. So
Mm-hmm.
English, math, science, fine arts, world language, or they think about the most popular careers that are known to people. So engineer, nursing, teacher, doctor. This website allows students to explore beyond that whole realm of things. I also love that you said, hey, get on a college campus and explore. You don't have to sign up for a real visit. You can literally walk around. Believe it or not,
Mm-hmm.
college campuses are quite nice to just explore and
Mm-hmm.
stretch your legs, especially if you're doing a road trip from Ohio to Florida. Get yourself out of the car. Many of them have a coffee shop, so you can stop and get a coffee or something as well. If you're wondering about how to explore colleges a bit, NACAC, which both Christina and I have been involved with, NACAC is the National Association for College Admissions Counseling, and they host college fairs. So this is a big room in physical space. It's a big room where you go in and there's tables for all the different colleges. You can walk around and explore. But what I love for 8th and 9th graders is that NACAC also hosts virtual fairs. So you could be sitting at home and learning about colleges without ever, getting out of your pajamas on a Saturday morning. So if you go to NACAC, nacacattend.org/fairs, you actually can go through and see the past fair schedule, and they will have the updated schedule coming here soon, but they will have information about their virtual fairs and about their in-person fairs. Before I jump to our friend Jeff Salingo, I wanted to I wanted to talk about the scholarship websites you mentioned. Raise.me is that micro scholarship search website. This is a great page for parents to create a profile for your kid. Don't make it for you. You're not going to college. Your kid is. Also for teachers and educators out there, there's a portal you can make for yourselves if you want to explore this. They also do have a college search tool, and you can start exploring colleges using raise.me. And it's a great way to, as Christina said, kind of earn micro scholarships. So you get to put in your activities and classes you've taken, and then there are places that will offer you micro scholarships. So $250, $500, but those add up really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And lastly, you said that you told all your students to sign up for goingmerry.com. So goingmerry.com is a scholarship search engine. It is free. This is not one of the scammy ones that are out there. There are some scammy ones out there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also available as an app and has lots of references and research tools for you as well. So goingmerry.com. And then I mentioned for parents who are in the Reddit world, go check out Applying to Colleges. The subreddit, it's a great resource for people to learn more about it and see if you can find me on there. Don't chuck it up. I am one of the virtual experts that are within the Applying to College subreddit. Before we started recording, you mentioned our friend Jeff Salingo and a resource that he has put together for students, and this is the 2025 buyers and sellers list. So what is this? How can parents utilize this type of tool?
So the buyers and sellers list, and I'll put a plug in that there's there's a book called Who Gets In and Why that Jeff
Mm-hmm.
Salingo wrote, and in that he talks about buyers and sellers, which are basically the concept that some schools are buyers, and some schools are sellers. So as you're looking at this spreadsheet, interactive spreadsheet that he has available for free on his website, you do need to register to get access to it. But you can go on and see what are the schools that are generous, that are offering financial assistance in some way, typically through scholarships or grants to prospective students to enroll, and which are saying, we're glad that you love us, but you're going to be paying full freight. And so it's a really eye-opening list. And you can go in, you can search for I was going to say your dream school, which ironically is the name of Jeff's newest book. I'm not on his promo tour, but Dream School is also a great book that just came out that Jeff Salingo wrote, I will say it is a great book. He talks about considering schools that are not necessarily the Ivies or, the super selective schools, but are, boy, pretty incredible in terms of outcomes. If you look at what they offer and what people are doing when they graduate from some of these schools, he has a list in there of schools. It doesn't encompass all the dream schools, but I will say it's a pretty good list of schools that are in there. And he talks a lot about why families should be looking outside of maybe, that short list that people always assume. But the buyers and sellers list, I would go on there if you have a list of schools, or maybe you're even interested in like looking at what your alma mater is. Are they a buyer or a seller? I've had parents go in there and they're quite surprised. So definitely check that list out online. And then because I just mentioned a couple books, if it's okay, Chuck, I'd love to just mention another book that I love that is it's been on my shelf forever, it feels like forever, but I really encourage families early on to take a look at it, is the Where You Go Is Not Who You'll Be book by Frank Bruni.
Yep.
And that book, I have sent that book to parents over the years. Essentially the TLDR, but I want you to read it. But the gist of it is basically talks about the fact that just as the title says, where you go to college doesn't necessarily dictate your life trajectory. There's so much about what you do when you get to an institution, regardless of what that institution is. It is about what you are doing there, the opportunities that you take advantage of that are offered to you, the opportunities you create for yourself in the institution, the relationships you make with faculty, all of those things. Those are the things that dictate what happens next. Yes, you will have a diploma with potentially a fancy name on it that may get you an interview somewhere, but it is not going to get you the job or the career or the life that is going to make you happy. And so I tell families, read this book because it's really eye-opening, and he gives some examples in there of different people. But I tell students, wherever you go to college, Chuck, you and I both went to small private colleges that change lives. We go to these schools and we've worked at these schools, and I have seen it firsthand. Kids who go on and do incredible things from places that you will not find in the U.S. News and World Report's top 75 list. And that is because a lot of what they do there, and again, the people in those institutions that make it possible for them to have successful journeys beyond college. So that's my soapbox, but I love that book, and I just felt like I needed to say it.
Well, yeah. And so it's Frank Bruni. It's a book that I've read as well, and I'm trying to remember specifically the title. It's Frank Bruni, and the title is
It's Where You Go Is Not Who You'll Be. Yeah. And it's excellent. It has a shelf life, actually, which I love as well. Yes. It's been around for a while, but it makes a lot of sense. And one other book I'll mention that I think is a must read for parents, especially those parents who have children who have demonstrated academic success in a way that they potentially could be looking at some super selective colleges, as an example, is the book Never Enough by Jennifer Braheny Wallace. And the reason I mention that is we've touched on the impact of mental health and the crisis really that's happening in our world, and particularly amongst young people. And I think it's really important for parents to understand what that pressure really looks like. And she provides some really great advice in that book for parents. So I can't stress that enough as a parent myself, that that's a really great, excellent resource. So
And what was
those
that?
are my book.
What was that
It's called
resource again?
Never Enough, and it's by Jennifer Brahene Wallace. And it came out a few years ago. She has been on numerous podcasts as well. And it's a really good book for those of us who, if you're thinking, gosh, my student's doing well, and you want to encourage them. You don't want to, squash their dreams of success, but there's a way to do that, a way to encourage them. So,
Well, and I'm showing people the ctcl.org website. Of course,
yes.
you and I, our lives were drastically impacted by this organization and member institutions. I had a lovely conversation with Anne, the executive director of CTCL. It's over an hour long. It's an interview on my YouTube channel. Go watch it. It's great. But the founder and creator of CTCL, the Colleges That Change Lives, Lauren Pope, wrote the book that really shook the world, which was Looking Beyond the Ivy League. And that started this conversation of impacting people like Frank Bruni and Jeff Selingo, of where you go really, doesn't drastically impact your actual course of success in life. So if you want to go old school, the OG, Lauren Pope, Looking Beyond the Ivy League, the book is available out there. Even though it was written a few decades ago, you'll read it now and you'll be like, wow, this still hits. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So those are a lot of great
Absolutely.
resources. I will tag as many of them as I can in the show notes. Of course, if you have questions, feel free and comment on this episode, and either myself or Christina would be happy to respond. So before we wrap up, Christina, I would love to give you 90 seconds to, what is your soapbox? As a mom, as a college counselor, what's advice that you would love to be able to give all of my listeners?
Gosh, I feel like I've been on a soapbox this entire episode, Chuck. So thank you for allowing me to remain here. My soapbox is I, uh, for me, I have I know I keep harping on the mental health piece, but I think for me, the most important thing that we can do to support our students, both as parents and professionals, is really to encourage them to just be. And it sounds so simple, but we hear so much about, can you craft my child into something? How do we the term that drives me, it's like nails on a chalkboard, package. How do I package my kid? They're not they don't belong in a package. That's not how it works, and it shouldn't work that way. And so for me, my advice is, let your kids know how awesome they are as themselves. And you can certainly help them bring out that awesomeness in different ways. Have them explore things that we hadn't considered before that would demonstrate, the strengths and things like that. But don't try to draw their path for them. People who know me well know that the book that sits on my desk is Harold and the Purple Crayon, and I love that book. It's a children's book, and the story is basically Harold has a purple crayon. He draws his future. Let your kids have their own purple crayon. Don't take their crayon away from them. Start drawing pathways to things that don't make sense for them, and then they feel the pressure to succeed, because they will be fine. They are great the way they are. Sometimes it takes us to point that out to them, but don't change that for them. And so that's my soapbox. I hope I take my own advice as a parent. I'm trying really, really hard to do that. I think I'm doing okay. I think I'm doing okay so far. So, but that's my advice for parents is love your kids, hug your kids, spend time with them while they're home. This couple years, especially if you have eighth and ninth graders, is going to fly by. Like I said, I cannot believe my kids are at this point already. And so I'm really just also trying to enjoy the journey with them, and not have so much stress that it feels like such a chore to go through this with them, because it's a really big decision and part of their life that you can enjoy that time together, go on trips together, visit schools. That's what I intend to do, and make the most of it.
Yeah. That's awesome advice. Christina Dooley, business owner, independent educational consultant, certified education planner, and of course, a mom of triplet ninth graders. It has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. I really appreciate all of your insights, knowledge, and resources that you've been able to share with us today. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chuck. It's been awesome to spend time with you. I should have said at the beginning, you're also one of my favorite IE season people. So
I appreciate that.
Feeling is mutual.
Well, folks, that's all the time we have for today, but fear not, we will be back next week with more tips and tricks to help you conquer the college application process like a boss. Until then, remember, don't chuck it up.